Hello, cousins. Welcome to SASS Mass, our spirituality and support symposium. Think morning witchy chats around a warm campfire. The recording has started, and by participating in SASS, you agreed to read and accept the terms of engagement, which I'll post here in the chat. They're also under SASS Mass on our website. We ask that you mute during the recording for clarity during the meeting and for the afterplay. We will get started with a few announcements and then get into all the good witchy stuff.
Hi, witches. I'm just out and about here witching it in my community. And we have a lot coming up. So I just wanted to give like some highlights of things. So as I think all of you here, I think have watched the town hall, but it is posted in our teams. And for September, we will have our SASS Mass meeting in the hearth groups. But in October, we will reunify together. There was one big group. However, we are going to offer some times for SASS. For Sacred Space. And I always do that because they both begin with S's. So I'm talking about Sacred Space. So Sacred Space on the 7th will be in your hearth groups. But come October, we will reunify for Sacred Space. The Sacred Space in October happens to be on a Saturday. So we're probably just going to have 2 Sacred Space meetings because we plan on having 2 meetings on the 7th of every month. But we're always going to have 1 meeting on the first Saturday of every month, but Sacred Space just happens to be on Saturday in October. So we're probably just going to have the 2 meetings just so y'all have the heads up and there's like no confusion on that. The biggest thing that's probably happening over the next 2 weeks is getting ready to switch our platform, which we're very, very excited about because when Jen Marie and Maggie kind of started Bright and Dark, they had some help with their website. But we've really outgrown it. And with the shop, the website, the platform we have doesn't really do everything it needs to do. So it's actually really important for us moving forward to have something that better supports us and the community as at large. So I just wanted to mention it because stay tuned for announcements over the next couple weeks. We will all have to sign up on this new platform, but I'm planning on doing most of that communication through personal emails to everybody. But I just wanted to give people a heads up that that's kind of the next thing that's happening. And we'll have to actually have you kind of sign up on the new website. But hopefully we've worked it out so it causes minimal confusion, but certainly reach out to support at Bright and Dark if you have any questions. There's been some questions about where do I book a private session? And on our website right now, where it is under resources. So if you go to our website, click on resources, you'll see our calendar, which has all of our meetings posted. And also you'll see private sessions where right now Jen Marie and Millie are offering. And that's open to everyone. And we will have more people actually doing private sessions in the near future. So that's all. Of course, if anyone has any announcements, feel free to jump in. Happy Sunday. Ta-da.
I think it's very. We both jump in. Go ahead, Whit.
I just want to add about the tickets. I haven't been able to post it in the general yet for the spring convergence. But tickets for the actual convergence are still going to be on sale. But the lodging is closed as of right now. So if you are still interested in coming and still wanting to come, email support@brightanddark.org and we can get that figured out so that we can move forward and you can still join us. Oh, the autumnal convergence. Sorry, I am literally working on spring convergence stuff right now too. So that's what was in my head. Sorry, the autumnal convergence, spring convergence, we're working on it. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. I think it's very tidy that with all of this talk about how we are going back to our roots and going back to like the original calling and format of uh foundations, how it came through um with the two meetings for sacred space. That's how we used to do it. We used to do an afternoon meeting and then an evening meeting. And I think again, it's very tidy that that just happens to work out that the first meeting of the relaunch of foundations is like that. So I'm just gonna put that one out there. Um, man, so much has been going on this last week. Like a couple of things that I want to like bring up. In Alaska, we have very obviously like tipped toward autumn, right? We've made that shift that of it is no longer summer, it is now the mad dash to get ready to make winter suck less than last year. And so that's very much on the air. It's very much like what the trees are saying and what everything around is trying to communicate is this like preparation for the inward turn. And, I joke around about, every year Alaskans just like have this really sick internal challenge of like, "Yeah, let's try to not die better this year." And so yeah, right. About 2 days ago was the first time I felt that chill in the morning of like that shift. And it's been really interesting walking around uh the property that I live on and looking at all the like, oh my God, I have so many rose hips to harvest and high bush cranberries, and the apples are coming in and the crab apples are coming in. And, I saw Kim harvesting their garden recently too. So the harvest is in full swing. And it's my practice to look at my external environment and also apply that to my internal environment, my internal processing and relationships. And so I think I brought it up in the guild, in the Spellcrafters Guild before, of how, I have a practice that is similar to veiling during the uh like when the veil starts to go thin. I start to wear beanies and hoods and things like that as a reminder to like my system, uh, that how sacred this inward turn is to my lived experience, right? And I'm trying to figure out ways of doing it better this year. How can I learn from my experiences last year and improve on that? And uh this year what I'm wanting to do for that like veiling practice is to like be more intentional about the veils that I choose, right? So I have beanies that friends have made me. Like those are higher on my like magical list as ones that I just bought from a store, right? And so I want to have more of them be magical or ones that I've made myself and see how that affects uh the like how it works, how well it works, right? Um if it like deepens that relationship with that part of my practice. I'm even considering like stitching some specific stones in different hats and things that I have. Uh and shawls and hoods and stuff like that. And I was wondering kind of what you guys, if any of you guys have a practice that you do during the dark times, or things that you do in preparation for that, like the twist or the turn, the tipping of the season? Anybody? Does anybody have any questions about establishing a practice and doing that? Because it's something that is like, I don't necessarily teach so much about like what different traditions do and what like different cultures do for these kinds of things. I tend to teach more about cultivating your own relationship with your practice. I think that these kinds of things, when they come from within, especially when you're first starting out, when they come from within, they're more powerful. They have more. They bear more weight. And go ahead, Whit.
I've definitely I haven't done anything that I would say is like I've dipped my toes in a few different things, um, and I am definitely feeling a pull to do something this year. Um, the universe has made it very clear on what I need to focus when I go inward. Um, I have had a lot of death surrounding me in the past 2 months. And I think it's something that both myself and my partner are going to be focusing on of, you know, really examining our relationship with death and the variety of different meanings that holds as well too. Um, and just kind of thinking about, so how can I honor that with something, some sort of I'm a very chaotic witch, and so coming up with rituals that I stick with has been really interesting for me. Um, I get a theme and I'll stick with the theme, but it'll change depending on what. I used to say my ADHD, but I think it's more of what I'm feeling called to, like how to practice it. Um, and so I've been thinking about veiling um, and seeing how that feels, like truly working on a veiling practice. Where I'm struggling with it is trying to figure out how I can do it at my job where I can't always have something on my head. So I'm trying to be creative with thinking about, do I find like a clip or a bobby pin or um I don't know. I was throwing it out there of any other ideas of, different ways that one could veil. Yes, Chin Marie.
You could make a special hair oil or something and like anoint your crown instead.
I mean, I have a very good hair oil that I got from somewhere.
Dude, look at my hair. Like, what is up with this oil? Is so crazy, right?
It's because I'm a magical witch.
No, I like that idea because then that is a way to still have that ritual without
Right.
having to have like times where I have to take
Mhm.
my veil off or my beanie off or my whatever I'm using to cover myself.
Right. And I would recommend, if your scalp isn't too sensitive for scent of some sort, to do a scent, because it incorporates another, because you can forget that you did it, right? But every time you like waft yourself, you're going to remember that, you know what I mean? Every time you like move suddenly and do the waft thing, you'll remember that you did it, and it kind of brings that back. That's why for me, wearing something does that, because every time I look at it, every time I feel it, it's a sensory thing. It reminds me that I'm doing this working, and that like honor and respect for my system. And that's what I'm doing. Go ahead, Maria.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? Great. So I definitely use the oils. Like veiling for me because I have so much hair, and like I feel like I am veiled, and like the relationship that kind of I have with my hair. Um, and I really do like work the relationship with my hair. But I do love the oils, and I use the oils every time I leave the house, especially if I'm going in public. And I do like intentionally pick the oils based on like the intention they were that they had, like how you and Kim blended them, the intention that they have. I do purposefully pick the one like that I'm going for to assist me with that. Um, and the one thing that I did really like that I'm going to continue to do, it's a little bit early for that, but I have the ritual of opening up the fireplace for the season, and we do start that in the fall. In New England here, the early fall has been very warm. It almost still feels like summer and through like October. So we'll see what happens this year. But as soon as we get that nice fall day, I do like to have a ritual when I'm opening up the fireplace. And last year I used the Sacred Fire Starter. I don't know if we still sell them in the shop, but I loved that. I loved using that. I feel like because I don't have something that every year like might be a little bit different until I really find the thing that like, oh yes, like this is definitely, like what I want to do all the time. But also that is like that is how I've always operated. Like this has to be done at this time. So there's a part of me that wants to like almost not do that, but just feel out every season as it changes and then decide like what it is that I feel that I need to best support my system. What I definitely know about my system is that I do need a lot of rest for change of the season, every change of the season. And so I do need to work with my system on that. And from the data collection, now that I'm paying more attention to the seasons, I do notice that like it is a restful time for me for winter. And so I actually am like looking forward to like the inward turn and the rest. And I'm realizing that like summer isn't what I thought it was for me. Like it's a little more hectic than I like acknowledged or maybe just recognized before because I wasn't really paying close attention. So so I'm excited to do the fireplace, and I am using the oils right now, and we'll see what else happens.
And pass it off to Ocean.
I just wanted to make sure she was done. Sometimes we need to pause for another thought, and like that's okay. Um, I'm so excited about this subject because while it totally took me 2 years, I saw Miss Remy's protection workshop exactly when I needed to, about like 2 weeks ago. um, and I love it because she literally talks about veiling in it. But I also I wanted to launch into a bunch of suggestions that I had thought of, but I really wanted to ask you like what are you veiling for? Like what is the intention of wearing a veil to you? Because there's lots of different ways that you can bring an intention with you to work, or even like I had a thought of like a little desk toy or like a stress ball or something that like super normal to keep on your desk, but you could like enchant it, or like um Roxanne is amazing and suggested to me to look into how I feel about the clothes that I'm wearing. What clothes make me feel veiled? What clothes make me feel protected? What colors make me feel protected? Like there's so many different ways that you can like take the intention and like make it work for you, is what I was thinking. How do you feel about that, Wit?
The world's my oyster. There's so many options. In true ADHD fashion, I have a few thoughts that popped into my head. So I'll try to go in order with them. First off, my desk, I love the suggestion of having a toy on there, but I've realized that it has become a very witchy desk. I now have crystals all over it and some spellcraft hanging from it, and so there's no question. I'm not in the closet at work anymore, which is great, you know. But like the intention behind it, I like what I'm feeling into it is that real a reminder that I'm turning inwards for it and that I need to be focusing on myself and what's in there and like protecting that my energy to do that and to not focus on those that are outside of me. If that makes sense. And so that's kind of where I am right now with it. I'm sure I will refine it as I get closer, but that is kind of what I'm being led to of really I've been told multiple times that I need to be focusing on myself in multiple different ways. And so like really kind of digging into that of figuring out how I can do that during this inward turn time and setting up that practice. I'll lob it back to you, Ocean.
I had the coolest idea. Can I share with you something that I did when I was focusing on my inner child? When I needed to remind myself of them and to pay attention to their needs, I carried around a picture of myself when I was in kindergarten. And I carried it in my wallet because that felt special to me. You know, when you carry a picture of your kid in your wallet, that's like, you know, those are like your important people are in your wallet, right? Like, so my thought was, what if you did the same thing with your current ID? So how many times do you have to pull out your ID, but you don't really think about it? Or worse, I know that sometimes when I pull out my ID, I look for the flaws. And I took my last ID picture in 2020, so you know that like that stuff's bent, like for sure.
Uh, I really like that idea. Thank you, Ocean.
Thank you for sharing. That was so much fun to talk about. Is it okay if I go next since there's nobody's hand up? Okay. I know I don't need permission, like I'm the mod, but I need permission. Um I had the most enlightening experience in Portland this last week. I've only been to Portland maybe like 3 or 4 different times. Um, but it's interesting how my experience developed because the first time I went to Portland, I stayed very close to the hotel I was at, and I only really went across the street to the park to like smoke. And I was at like a hunters convention there, so I was just mostly interested in the convention, and it was all inside the hotel, and it just felt like a magical experience. And then the second time I went to Portland, my boundaries kind of expanded a little bit, and I was able to like walk around more and see a mall that was nearby. I was actually at the same convention just a year later. Um, and I just like remembers like seeing the mall, and it was so much bigger than anything I had ever experienced where I was from. Um, and then the fourth time I went, I was like more of an adult, and I was able to like Uber around because that existed finally, and like was able to like navigate the city more and do more shopping and stuff. And that was with you guys, you know, that was the convergence trip. That was like shopping, and we went and explored, and we saw bars and restaurants and all sorts of things. And that was like even more magical than I had like experienced the first time when I like had gotten a taste of Portland. And this last time absolutely destroyed the magic. It was so like I can't explain the feeling because it exists in a duality of like it was so amazing to experience Portland in that way, and it was also horrifying and a little traumatizing. But like so sorry, I'm so bad at like connecting my stories into like a meaningful thing, but I'm just gonna go with it. So uh oh my gosh, my train is derailing as I speak. Um it was just insane because when you experience, so I was in Portland on the hottest day of the year, and Portland is not set up for heat. They're very much used to like cold weather, rainy weather, set up for water, not really for heat. And when you're in a really compact city like that, um, Karen pointed out to me, and I realized that like it's like a sauna because the concrete reflects the heat, and it's so much worse when you're in a big city like that. Um, and when you see people at their worst, and even places, you know, at like a community at their worst, it's like seeing their bones. Like it's really uncomfortable, and you know everybody has bones and they're made of a structure, and it's not always like, not everybody's bones are perfectly the same as everybody else's, but like man, Portland has some weird bones. Like I understand the phrase keep Portland weird so much better now. Because I used to just be like, oh yeah, people are weird in Portland, but there's just something so weird about Portland in a way that I can't explain because, like I said, it's one of the most magical places I've ever been. I met more witches last week just running around doing errands in Portland than I've ever met in my entire life up to this point. Like it was insane. But at the same time, like I saw someone like that may have been OD'd or they may have been passed away. I don't know. Like stuff that was extreme, like people were like in a really bad way, and like traffic and the road construction and like just a lot of really overwhelming like noises, and people in the city, they stop really like noticing cars. Like they'll just walk out in front of you and stuff, and it's kind of scary when like you don't expect a person to walk out if you haven't been living in a big city like that. And it's like just it was just this whole experience of like the best and worst of Portland all at the same time. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because that duality was amazing for me, especially with the under the reach. Because when you're in a really uncomfortable situation like that, like what do you reach for? But also when you're doing okay, like when you're like in a really magical place, like what is it you're okay being without? Like what is it you would never think of when you're like already fine? Like that you absolutely need when you're at your worst. I don't know. I just felt the need to say that part. Go ahead, Kim. I'm rambling.
It's absolutely okay to ramble, but I just wanted to add that um I have been experiencing similar situations with going to other towns that even I've like been in before. Like I was in Tahoe and Reno last week, and I experienced the same thing in Tahoe where like people do not pay attention to cars anymore. It's like they're just oblivious to what is like around them or something. I don't know. It's very weird. So that's not just in Portland, but also Portland has changed over the years, and there's a lot of bad and there's a lot of good. But I've been noticing a lot of the same things in other places as well. Oops. I raised my hand again. Sorry.
Go ahead, Ben.
I was just gonna say that I talk about this all the time with anybody who will stay in the vicinity of me while I talk about it. Um, that common sense shouldn't be called common sense anymore because it's not common in people. And then self-preservation is at like the lowest I've ever noticed before, like ever. People walk out into roads all the time. Nobody's looking. If you look at people while they're driving, 90% of people are looking at their cell phones. Like nobody's paying attention to what's going on around them, and it's amazing because like I mean the way that we've built, I'll call it civilization up right now, is like death is behind every door. Like everything about what humans do on a day-to-day basis is endangering to their lives, like just driving a car. I mean, honestly, just walking outside at this point, because you never know who's behind the wheel of a car. But then like I don't know, even the social systems, but I'm not going to get into that tangential rant. um so like yeah, it's definitely something that I've noticed here in Rhode Island too, is just like people. I think a lot of it, at least here, is that we have something like 7 universities in Rhode Island. So the majority of our land is either school or church. And so, like, between those two different experiences, you have just tons of people who just walk out into roads. Um, a great experience I love is because there are no stop signs at the end of a parking lot, like for a store of some kind in Rhode Island. People think you can just drive out into the road. You don't have to stop before you go. You can just go. Um, so that's always horrifying. You know what I mean? So yeah, self-preservation is like, it's like under, I don't even know where I don't think it even ranks on people's lists of priority anymore. Like I think that's how scary it's gotten. And so then when their actual lives are threatened, they have like this whole big panic attack because self-preservation's never been on their radar to begin with. So now all of a sudden it's like being shaken into them and they're like, oh God, what do I do? Attack the thing that's attacking me. That's all.
Go ahead, Jen.
I'm not sure even how to like. Actually, I'm gonna let Cami go because I'm still trying to figure out how to like say what it is I'm gonna say. So go ahead, Cami, and then I'll go.
Hi, I came a little late, but I think a lot of self-preservation has switched from protecting your physical self to your ideological self. A lot of people are very reactive when it's um, attacking what they think is their sense of self. Like that's why I think politics has gotten so bad, and people like minding what everybody else is doing has gotten so bad because our lives are digital, which means it's more of like your mental self. So all the self-preservation is about trying to preserve what you think of yourself and what your values are versus like trying to protect your physical self because there's so many physical safety things in place now that our brain doesn't have to worry about it as much, or it's perceived to not worry about it as much. I don't know, that's my thought.
Ocean, were you wanting to weigh in?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So first part of this is I want to ask a question. by like show of like hearts, if you guys do the little heart react. Who all here does channeling, like fully aware that you channel, or suspect that you might be a channel or have giftings in channeling or divination? Divination is another one, or even mediumship would be something along those lines, right? So, right. Then this is the group that I want to talk about this with. I talk a lot about how we all kind of experience our connection to uh, the spirit world differently, and we're supposed to, right? And that when we start to repair our relationship with that aspect of our system, the ability to channel, the ability to perceive the unseen or get messages or something like that, when you're receiving something that isn't like from within you necessarily. Of course, my brain just goes all the way around the other side. Well, maybe it is within you. Anyway, the experience of it, especially um, like what I have experienced, like the big messages, the mission kinds of things, the way that those like long channel sessions for me seem to work is that I I don't get all of like the whole bit, right? At one time. I get little bits of it, and like I get this little bit and then I have to trust and then kind of like do the thing, or actually do something with the information that I'm given, and then I'm given a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then it's something. It's almost like uh, my team or whatever I'm working with at that time is preparing my physical brain to be able to conceive of all the bigger picture, right? So we get like, oh, this little bit here, and then this little bit here, and then this little bit here, and then when the last little bit comes and you see the big picture, you're like, oh shit, like this isn't what I thought it was. Like this isn't anywhere, or it's much bigger than I thought it was. Uh, Kind of, do you guys experience it that way as well, or what is your experience of like channeling? Because this is what, like, I have been kind of tripping over the last 3 weeks, and those on the support team have heard me talking about this, of how I had this oh shit moment when I was starting to talk about long form spells and how I love long form spells and how they are like some of the most powerful workings because of the like repetitive dedication that you do with it. And then like at the same time, I was working on kind of finishing up the foundations curriculum because foundations is a channeled piece. That was something uh, that I was kind of given or led on a couple of years ago, and it's been this like whole thing. And I realized that foundations was a channeled long form spell specifically for um, removing illusions so that you could see who you are, like so that you could remember who you are. And my brain has been just like, again, tripping over how tidy all of the last couple of years has been, and how like everything makes sense why I had such a hard time trying to explain foundations to people as a like, well, it's this program and this like, structure for shadow work, and it's all of these things, and it is all of those things. Um but it's like a lot more than that as well. And so go ahead, Ocean. I'm going to get all ranty about it.
Actually, I wanted to ask you a question if that's okay. Um, what was the original piece of information you got that led to the creation of the foundation program?
It was applying a practice of shadow work and deep introspection that was in alignment with the wheel of the year or the seasonal changes or the traditional correspondences of the moon cycles. And so that's what the original thing was, is that I needed to create a program, um, which my head interpreted as I needed to create a program that people could do that could that would take them on this, like give them structure for this. But I was only given like that information, and so I like dialed it in with what a lot of you guys that experienced foundations from the beginning of what that was. Um, and it just, the more of you I met and the more that I think you guys influenced the flow, the more it just kind of really dialed in. And I got more information, like being able to interact with so many witches to see what they really needed for support and what they were asking for support. And then seeing, oh shit, like there's this tidy little piece that we can add to this. Um, that's Did that answer your question? And I guess I'm wondering if like what has been your experience with some of the channeled stuff that you've done, and like um or what is your what has been your experience with channeling, and how did you navigate like communicating the see, words are hard. I'm struggling. And that's the other thing too that I'm noticing a lot is like Ocean and I are going through recordings of meetings and things like that of like way back a year ago. We're going to go like 2 years ago. And I can see in the recordings when I start channeling. I can see when I'm tapped into whatever it is that I've been kind of tapped into the last couple of years. And like where I am now, uh, I feel like a completely different like person. Tapping into that is not like, when I have to say I have to tap into it, that to me is a cue that, oh, you're actually channeling. That's not coming from within you. Right. And I can't force my system to go back to uh, the places that it was like in over the last couple of years. And it's really interesting, uh, that realization of, I've heard a lot about like channeled pieces. The Law of One is one of those like long channeled pieces uh, that it was like 2 years or several years of working with a specific entity that they were like channeling. And then it was no longer there. And I this was the first time that I experienced that this is the chunk. And when the chunk is like all out, I'm not able to tap into that bit anymore because the information's already there. I already have all the information. I don't need it anymore. Uh, and it's God, it's been this whole thing. Go ahead, Maria.
This way, and sponsored to you by CVS, where I am now. Um, I'm actually trying to get coffee. It's over there. So this topic is very interesting, and my perspective on it has changed so much over the 20 years that I had to pause because I'm like, is that number right? Yeah, that that I've been doing divination stuff. Um, so, I guess there's like, my brain is going in 5,000 different directions. I think that I believe that everybody can channel, and has like psychic abilities or whatever you want to call it. I believe that everybody can. I just believe the way that you work it can be unique. And I think it's important to kind of like know the history of things, the background of things, but I don't even like to say I'm Claire Audion or I'm Claire this, because it just is like, this is just how I work. And I tap into multiple things. And so for me, I just try not to get caught up in like that. What I do know for sure is that when I'm intentionally channeling or when I'm relaxed, I do tend to receive more information. Doesn't mean that I don't receive information like walking around, CVS, but I tend to like, hone in on in what situations do I maybe receive more information, when my mind and body are like in different situations. And when I am relaxed, when my mind and body are both relaxed, I tend to receive more information. I mean, I think, Jen Marie, you said a while ago too. I mean, sometimes it's hard to tell. I mean, obviously, sometimes I give information that I would have no way of knowing. So, I mean, that is a clear, thing. Sometimes it gets mixed up. Not mixed up, but it gets intertwined with your own. But such a big part of channeling for me is that whatever messages I'm getting, I have to be able to interpret them. Right. And so I'm getting messages specifically so I can interpret. So my guides are going to know how they're going to know like how I'm going to interpret, whether that's for me or for somebody else. So that bit is so important. Like, even in a divination, right? I could lie out a spread and read it, and someone else can come and look at it and read it differently. And both are right. Like, both are not wrong. But it's this channeling, this part of what we do is really wound up in our lived experience and how we're going to interpret a specific message. And that's going to change as you learn more. So it's very interesting. And I think this is too why, like, I'm happy that like there's more science about this type of thing kind of supporting it, because it's hard to like quantify that, or the people that need like proof, which I don't. But like, there's others people that like, well, prove that you're channeling. It's like, well, you can't. But when I tell you something that I have no way of knowing, that's really the only thing. But it's so based on feeling, right? It's like you can just kind of feel when something's connected, when something's like aligning, or you get that, like Jemmery says, feels like remembering, or you get that tingle, or it just feels exciting when you like know that something's right on. So it's kind of like listening. It's really like a whole system thing, right? It's like taking in information, being able to interpret, and then like really feeling what are those super highlighted things, And for me, like that is very, I do feel that in my body, like I'll feel a tingle, or I'll get like, goosebumps, or I just feel excited, or it makes me energetic, or it makes me like want to like learn more. And yeah, it's hard because like sometimes you do just get a little bit of information, but honestly, I think that's on purpose, because part of it's a learning process. And so like our guides aren't just gonna give us all the answers to this, because we're like students here of the earth. And so we're not gonna get, I mean, sometimes I've done like, 5 tarot spreads and I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, this isn't something I'm supposed to have more information. And what I used to be very resistant to that. And what I feel now is like with getting information is to really let go of the resistance and know that, with the intention that it's going to work out for like everybody's highest good, whatever, however you say that. And so I do have some trust in like the timing of things here on earth that I used to not have, because when something didn't happen, I used to see that as, oh my gosh, it didn't happen. I I do control as far as a coping mechanism, because I had a very stressful, like I had a childhood where I had to take a lot of responsibility, and so like just these things, it's all like woven in. It's all like woven in together. But I try to release the control and release when I think things are supposed to happen, and taking that data, that noticing how things actually generally work out. Just not in the way that I could have ever imagined. But to me, that's also exciting, because yes, we are going to go through some hard times, but some of the best things in our life haven't happened yet, and just like trusting that flow. So I touched on a couple of things there. I'm sorry I side quested, but I think handing it off. And Ocean, Jen Marie, have your hands up. Let me see. Ocean, you were next, or did you just still have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm next.
Hello, Ocean.
Hi. Thank you so much, Maria. You're amazing. So many beautiful things to say. I'm so glad that you touched on the clairs, because um I do a lot of thinking about those, because it drives me nuts how like it's it is touted as like a gift, but to me it feels like an inherent quality that we've just forgotten how to connect to, like a lot of us, and some of us just have like stronger connections to one or the other, but it's just like your senses, right? Like, you know, if you lose one of your senses, you're going to connect more strongly to another one. Or if, maybe like, you have like difficulty with one of your senses, even, you're going to connect better to another one. And I feel the same way about the clairs. I feel like there's more than just the five senses. I feel like we sense things in multiple facets in ways that we're not always trained to pick up on. Um, and I feel like that's what the clairs are. Like they're just information gatherers. And for channeling, I wanted to touch on that too, because I've also been paying more and more attention to my own channeling, and also paying more attention to the way I share information as well. So super glad that you brought that up, Jen Marie, because I used to get really excited when I got channeled information, because for me it was just simply having something to say in the conversation. Like I was like, oh, that's a really good thing to say. I'm going to say that thing. But it wouldn't always come out in the right context, because I would be so excited. And my guides were like, you needed to wait to use that later. That was for later in the show. You're not supposed to open it right now. And I started learning to like observe a little more. And I'm also waiting to be asked, because I am putting more intentional focus on the idea that other people are absolutely capable of understanding themselves and their own path in their own time and in their own way. And if they need my help, then they'll ask. But I used to just be like, oh, I can help. I can help here. I can help there, because I wasn't always helping myself. And I was like, but I can help them, and that'll be enough, right? And I used to think that was the way to build community, was like, if you help other people, then you are surrounding with people who will then help you back. And the more I deconstructed transactional relationships, the more that I realized that that was also the relationship I was having with myself. And so when I channeled, I it was almost like I couldn't just do it for myself. I would have to pop in to the like cafe and be like, "Hey, I'm doing readings." And what I would do, and what I always do, is whatever reading comes up, the information is for me and for the other person. It is my perspective of the question that they asked me, and it is from my lived experience, so it's information from me too. And so I would be like giving readings to other people, and I would be getting information myself. And I realized that was splitting my focus, and I still wasn't giving myself my full attention. Um, and taking a step back from doing readings for other people, and from uh, interacting in a way that was more seeking validation of my gifts and my clairs, rather than showing up as if they already are validated and they already, like, I already do believe them, to the extent that I do. And just doing a trust fall like that has genuinely like shifted the way that I take in information in a way that's kind of like streamlined it. It like it's everything I experience is information, and every choice that I make can tell me something about where I'm at, both emotionally and mentally and spiritually and physically. Like the choices I make are either ways to cope with something or ways to get my needs met. I feel like I'm going to leave it there. Go ahead, Jen Marie.
All right. So this is going back to like how we communicate like channeled messages and stuff like that, and how like it's something that like there's a lot of conditioned insecurity about that, right? And it's something I am finding more and more and more insecurity within me, that like conditioned insecurity about actually like talking about the channeled messages as they are channeled messages. I used to have a big resistance to anything that I considered like woo woo because of like my uh because of the over sensationalization of witchcraft, and when there's like the ego wrapped up into it and wanting to like put on a show and be like special because of this like stuff, it was something that I was resistant to, because I witnessed it so much and I like didn't want, okay, dial it all the way back. Like it's that fear of being seen as boastful or as one of those people that have their ego wrapped up in their like giftings uh and that. So I've been doing a lot of shadow work around that, and like how do I show up authentically in spaces, um like with all this, right? I noticed that I really hold back in social situations. I've been looking at that a lot over the course of the last few months, interacting with like local witches and seeing how my system responds in those kinds of situations. And I still like really, really hold back. I don't know how to navigate that stuff when I'm sitting in a group of witches that don't know who I am or what I do, and someone else is hosting an event, that has, again, nothing to do with me or like any of that kind of stuff. And yet, what they're talking about is all up in my wheelhouse. How do I navigate that situation? Do I talk? Do I like go into what I do? Would that be seen as like taking over the like social dynamic or whatever? But then at the same time, my guides wouldn't have pulled me or directed me to be there if that wasn't needed in some way, right? Because I believe that uh being authentic uh is like aligned, but man, have I been like, yeah, it's, yeah, oh my God. I have more, but I want to stop because it kind of side quests a little bit. I actually wrote it down so I didn't forget. So go ahead, Maria.
So just a weigh in response to that, what you brought up. So from my perspective, because you're so much aware of it and the way that you work with others, I can never foresee you in a situation where like you're gonna take over and like because that's not like your intention. And I think there is a lot of times like ego can get in the way of things. I think that like I completely like understand what you just said about like wanting like someone else is kind of hosting a meeting and you're not wanting to like maybe like step on toes per se, but you also have a lot of experience that sharing that is going to resonate and is really valuable for other people. And the way that you share like your connection based magic and just all the work that you've been doing like with the foundations program, and like if I was in that group I would want you to share. That's all I can say. Like I think that how we do things here is even just asking for consent and just saying like, hey, like I have some experience, would you like me to share it, and then or even having a conversation like beforehand, um more for just like if it's that that witch that's maybe hosting, just to say like like thank you so much for inviting me, like how much would you like me to share like in this space. And I know like it kind of like crosses over into it, but crosses maybe you have feelings of like what you described, but I just think that we're here, we aligned because something you said resonated with us, and there was something about the way that you were presenting information that we wanted more information. And if you're in that situation, there just may be people that are there to specifically hear what you have to say in the way that you present it. So if I was in the group and there was a witch feeling that sort of way, I wouldn't want them to hold back. But again, I know you and I know that there's no ego involved, and I know that your intention isn't to take over, and your intention isn't even to say my way is better. Your intention is really just to share a sharing of perspectives. With that said, we know that and not in every group is going to be open to that. So it's like kind of choosing in which groups is a sharing of perspectives and which groups are not, because then it's in those types of groups it's probably not valuable. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Maria. I really appreciate that. Um, did someone else have a weigh-in for some reason? Kat, did you have a weigh-in?
I did. I agree completely with Maria. Having been with you when we were talking to the vampires, you handled that beautifully. You kept asking everybody, am I taking up too much space? I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, and we were all like, no, we're just really interested in what you have to say. So we just kind of let you go with it, which is exactly what was needed in that situation. But you checked in often enough, and you handled that so beautifully. I think you just underestimated how exactly what Maria said, how well you were presenting it, how you were giving the information, and it made everyone curious to ask more and hear more. That it was really really nicely done, and I think you really checked in often enough to make sure that. Are you still engaged? Do you still want me to continue? Or am I, or have I just said too much already? But you did fabulous.
I did not realize how much I needed like validation today. Thanks, guys. Look at that emotion coming up. I think I'm going through like a phase of like insecurity that like I'll look at Julie popping it. That's funny. My world like rocked back in March. And I'm still like trying to uh find, or more it's like apply all of this perspective shift that I received by experiencing that catalyst. And, Catalyst, my mom moving away and, all this kind of stuff is just like, um, it's just a lot and it's confusing and life is weird. Like, look at this. Look at what we're doing. 3 years ago, I'd have been like, what? No. I'm hiding in Alaska. This isn't possible. Um, and I realize how much I'm still like, still have fear regarding uh, being a public witch, and how that is received because I have been very out like for, oh my God, over 30 years. That's weird to say. Um, and 30 years ago, it's a different world when it comes to talking about witchcraft and all of this kind of stuff. And so being seen or being able to communicate witchcraft in a like not woo woo way was very important to like survival and my being able to navigate life. And so, and this is why it kind of that realization of, oh, foundations uh, through a magical perspective is a long form spell. And actually talking about it like that triggers this fear of, because it goes all the way, right? It goes all the way from, oh, this is a program that you can do that's going to help you learn all of these things, to this is a fucking magical working and it's serious shit that's going to change your whole life and for the rest of your life and every relationship that you have for the rest of your life. Like actually saying it like that brings up that whole like fear of how will I be perceived? Am I going to be seen as like a snake oil salesperson? Am I going to be seen as someone who's trying to take advantage or spinning something in a way that is like um, makes it seem more like magical than it, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to be seen, I don't want to over sensationalize it, but yet at the same time, this is what it is. And all of my like uh things that I'm receiving are to, practice what you preach, practice what it is that you've received over the last couple of years. So yeah, totally doing that. But also that to just be and to stop worrying about how I'm received because it's not my business how I'm received. It's not my business how all of everything plays out. It is my business to be authentic and vulnerable and real, and that's it. And aligned, right? To be responsible in that way. But man, it's a whole thing. So I really appreciate you guys. I really appreciate being able to come into a space like this and just like, blah, blah, blah. um, thank you for not putting me on some fucking awkward pedestal because, like, I really love having a community that I can lean into. It's like everything. Go ahead, Maria.
I mean, in the beginning, there definitely was a little bit of like the pedestal happening, but it took the time to cultivate the relationships and then to kind of really work that out. But we also, those of us entering in, we had just really started our, I wouldn't say started our journey of deconstruction, but like we actively started a practice maybe with it, um, you know, it's interesting because the book club we're reading right now, and the book is Weave the Liminal by Laura Tempest Zarcroft, and she's a witch. And her home base is Rhode Island. But she just had made a post recently about this whole kind of the business side of things and receiving money for spiritual offerings, because there's a lot of that type of a discussion, and we've even received feedback about that, in respect to like, you have this information, why do you charge money for it? And I really liked Laura's perspective on it and the way that she did explain it, and it just was kind of something that did align with me, because I do believe that your time and your experience like is valuable. And yeah, there are in every profession, there are people that will take advantage no matter what. And I understand, like, we cross some lines because it's within, I guess, the spirit, the spirituality kind of realm, or considered that. But I, I'm under the belief where there's nothing wrong, but and again, it's the way that you have presented it, and now have a kind of team of people that are all aligned, and we want to reach as many people as possible. You do need money to do the things that we are doing and to support it, but we are not in the business of taking advantage of people, or like, we're not even really doing it to make money. If we make money, that's great. So far it's been like, we want Bright and Dark to succeed, to be able to like share this information, because what you just said about it is life-changing information. It is, because it changed my life. And so the people that are aligned to be in the program will be here, and the people that aren't won't. And there might be people that come in that aren't aligned, and they will quickly leave, and we might have some emails to sort out, but that's just part of it, right? A part of like being in the public. But I think don't forget that you're not alone, and that ask for help, like when you need help. If you feel like you need help even just talking or sorting through, because sometimes it even just helps to say the words out loud and get them out. But you're not alone. You have help. I think this is, I don't know, that journey of when these types of things happen, and these kind of things that we like go through. And I feel like this is kind of that like journey. And even though Foundations program has been going for 2 years, there is a shift, and we are starting to try to fine tune things to see like, okay, now we have this data collection, so how best to move forward. And it is like this something going on, and this like next part of it is all happening right now. And so for emotions to come up for you at this time is like completely understandable, and just let us know what you need. Let me see. Let me hand it off to Petra.
Yeah, I just wanted to I want to affirm everything that Maria said, and some things that kind of like came up for me when I was listening were questions kind of, sorry, there's a bunch of thoughts happening right now. My brain is like, here you go. And I'm like, I did not have enough sleep last night to filter through these in real time very quickly. My brain is like slow, but the thoughts are fast. So it's one of those days. But is kind of the idea around expansion or change brings up old wounds is kind of what is coming up. And I say that not just for you or for anyone else here. I say that for me. I'm currently going through this. So it was like there's lots of themes that you were talking about that were very relatable. I was like, oh, maybe this is a little like sneakily, like not sneakily, but like we don't know until we come into these spaces and share things how like many people are going through the same thing at the same time or something similar. And so I just wanted to say like, yeah, I can really relate to a lot of what you're saying, not to make the conversation about me, but just to be like, hey, you're not alone in this, because this part sucks. It's like really uncomfortable because I find for myself, I'll just speak to that because I have this desire to, I have an kind of an intellectualizing lens that kind of wants to come into play and analyze you. And instead, I think I'll just like choose vulnerability and like share a little bit, and then you can take what works and like don't have to feel like you're under a microscope, because nobody really likes that, including myself. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, just this, that there's like the more authenticity I seek in things, and the more I listen to my body when it says no or it says yes, the yes is almost scarier than the no, which is a thing to work with. That's like, oh shit. I got so good at being like, keep the things out, to be like what comes in, what is allowed past the gate, so to speak. And is that like the younger parts of myself, like kind of inner kiddo parts, that really just like needed to be liked to survive, because I am very good at being likable. I am a chameleon. That is one of my trauma. I don't want to say gifts. Ew, that feels gross. Skills? Yeah. Whatever. It like, but it's a hard thing to release because it's not just tied to trauma. I really do believe it's tied to like human beings as a social species. So there's some inherent like, not just like our own individual journeys with trauma and not being liked and the consequences of those things, or what happened if we didn't people please or fawn or whatever. It's that like human beings are truly social species, and that we really do have that inherent need for one another, because like for millions of years we needed each other, and we still do. Like, we don't take away millions of years of like biological knowledge, like epigenetic knowledge, by just like being stuck in colonialist capitalism for 500 years. Like that doesn't that doesn't do it. It's like cute. That's like 500, 3 million, not the same, you know? And so I just wanted to bring that piece into it and say that like it makes sense why like that might bring up really intense feelings. I know that it does for me sometimes when I have to like choose authenticity, and potentially risk losing a group that I like. Something that I have been really grateful for is that this group seems to be a place where like I can play with those boundaries and push those things. And you guys don't seem to like, at least not to my knowledge, or I'm missing the social cues potentially, that like that is okay and that is welcome. And so I think that it's a really beautiful opportunity that like we have here to then take those experiences and play with them in the real world. And I say play because I think that bringing in that sense of curiosity can be supportive. It can inherently kind of open things up a little bit, whereas it's really hard to be curious and fearful at the same time. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying that we need to like disavow ourselves of our fear or divest or like abandon it. Like, fear is a very protective emotion. I'm super glad that my ancestors learned to run away from saber-toothed tigers, and that when I've been in situations where it's like, get the hell out of here, kid, I've listened, right? That like the spidey senses have been going and my body's been like, let's go. And I've like left the party on time or whatever. And if that's intuition, it's yes, but I think it, our intuition utilizes our body to help us like understand the messages that we're receiving. But I think it also can, there's this thing in somatics called overcoupling, where like the stimulus is appropriate, but it's been overcoupled with a specific situation. So we've received too much of like a certain pattern, and then our body just expects like that's the pattern that's going to keep going. When we enter that situation, we're primed to see it that way, versus being like, is this really what's happening? Or a thing I like to do for myself to cope with this is to be like, what's the worst thing that can happen if I open my mouth and tell the truth? And because it really does help me like cognitively and kind of be like, okay, like actually this might be okay. Like, so what? This group of people in my own community that like may or may not vibe, like I might not be invited back. And maybe that's okay, because maybe I'm not actually supposed to be here. And by getting ousted from this group, there'll be a different group that someone will be there and be like, actually, we want you to be a part of this thing. And it's way more aligned. But I think it's this piece of like, if we're not authentic, people can't say no or yes to us because they don't know us. And that has been a really hard lesson for me to learn, because I used to barter is the word that is coming up, like for my emotional safety. I would play the role to be included, to not have that survival instinct activated. And I am very aware that I'm a very polarizing person. And I don't mean that in a way to shame myself. I think that the truth is a polarizing thing, and I've aligned myself with truth, and I've done it for a long time. And I sense that, like, you know, I think truth and authenticity are at least sisters, like, if not kind of very similar things. And so for any and all of us that are on that path of trying to find out who we really are, these situations will present themselves and their opportunities, even though they maybe don't feel like that, because it's scary. It's hard to make a choice that feels more authentic, because I think that when we get into the cognitive of like, should I shrink, should I not, should I whatever, it's really important to kind of like within our skills and within our capacity and whatever relationship we're building with our bodies, to kind of tune into our body and say, like, what does my body want to do in this situation? Like, do I want to move towards this thing that my brain is being like, scary, danger, no? Because that's for me at least, on my journey in the past, specifically 2 years, that's the thing that I've learned, is that my thoughts don't often tell the same story. They tell the trauma narrative, and my body is telling me this is the next step. And that's really hard. I had that this past week with this like thing with my therapist of like trying to figure out somatic discernment between when I'm with this person in real time, I want to move towards, I want to solve, I want to fix it, but I'm being repeatedly communicated this person doesn't hear me. And when I'm away from them, I want to like push away that like sense of wanting to whatever. And I went to the holistic life navigation session this week. Luis is great, and his sessions are once a month and they're free. 10 and 10 recommend anyone go to them. But he was talking about this about somatic capacity, and this just feels really important to share, and then I'm going to kind of wrap this up, is just that like, as we find more authenticity, I'm paraphrasing from him, is that like when we reach moments of confrontation in relationships and someone can't be held accountable, or they don't have space for the truth that we want to tell or whatever, they're communicating to us their own somatic capacity. And that's like essentially a non-negotiable. They're saying like, I don't know how to hold this. And we have a choice in that moment to like, do we continue to kind of repeat potentially past patterns of people who in the past didn't have the capacity to hold us? Or do we say, thanks for communicating that to me, and we move on to spaces or places or people who do? And I was like, damn. And I was like, I need to sit with that for like several times and digest, because this feels huge, and I really wanted to share it this week. And it's so funny how it kind of ties into this. The universe is an interesting place when it comes to these themes, is just that like, that can still be really hard for parts of us though, right? Because that conditioning is so strong, that overcoupling is so strong, that like, I need to please, I need to whatever, or how do I be accepted? Because like, that did keep us safe for so long. And how do I just the what's coming up in this moment is like that there's a difference between old safety and true safety. like familiar, like how I classify it in my brain is there's a difference between familiarity and safety. Because safety for me is like ultimately tied to authenticity, and familiarity, whilst it feels comfortable, like a pair of like old shoes that don't like support your feet anymore, that like don't, that doesn't really do its job, but like it's so comfy, or there's like your foot fits perfectly, but the arch is totally fallen, it doesn't work. It can be hard and scary to like choose the new. And so I thank you for like being in the space and being authentic. And I also just want to say that in this society, we're so like internal validation is really important. I think if we're not internally validating ourselves, then there's no amount of external validation that can compensate for that. Like it's just not possible. Like the math doesn't math on that front. But I think that what lots of psychology stuff I've seen anyway, especially in spiritual spaces, misses is that like internal validation isn't enough alone because we're social beings. And so like I thank you for being brave and recognizing that you need external validation and doing that in such a like public way so that we all can see like, hey, it's okay. And I just want to validate that for everyone, because I'm like, we're people and we need that. So thank you.
Thank you, Petra. I appreciate you. All right, Kat, go ahead.
Hey. So I love this topic because being authentically myself is something that I'm pretty good at. And that's one skill that I've actually acquired through my years is learning to be wholly my authentic self wherever I am. And I learned that skill through sheer logic and probably trauma response. But I have a really logical brain at some point. And then there was this trauma response where my mom kept telling me and arguing my feelings with me all the time. Like, I feel angry. No, you don't feel angry. What you really feel is frustrated, to the point where I had to deep dive all my emotions. I mean, at the time, it was really frustrating to be told that that's not what I'm feeling. But now I have this space where I don't just automatically accept my feelings. I have to like think about them and say, where is this coming from? Was it or that I'm really feeling? I can label it as this, but is that what I'm really feeling in the moment? But I sat down with myself and I said, okay, Kat, you're one person. There are how many billion people on this planet? If you tried, could you make all of them happy? The answer was a big no. Like, I could be this way for this one group of people. I could turn around and be that way from the other group of people. And then there'd be people who'd be like, you're so wishy-washy. Why are you this way with one group of people and that way with another group of people? So I failed and failed. I can't please everybody. That's just impossible. So the only thing I can do is just be who I am, and I will attract the people who are like me. The people who like me for who I am will stay. The people who don't like me for who I am can just go away, because this is me. If you can't handle me and my most authentic self, then you can just walk out the door, because this is who I am and I'm not going to change for anybody, because I just can't. It hurts when I change. I've tried. It hurts. I've given up little bits of myself, and it's a very lost, scary feeling when you navigate away from who you are to find your way back to the person that you need to be. So I've learned to just never give that up, and then I never have to find myself again. But I love the fact that you brought that up. I thought that was an amazing thing that, yeah, yeah, it's just hard. But it's worth the work. And then I think Maria is next.
I was just thinking about kind of the whole conversation so far, and it just reminded me, like, there are times where we kind of like go through this like longer journey and process of something. And then like with the sharing of information and like how when we share it and how we share it. But when I was like 20, I walked into a therapist's office and I sat down and I said, I have some things I think I need to talk about. And that kind of started my adult journey of like talking about my feelings. But she said something that was like the most impactful thing, one of the most impactful things that anyone ever said to me. And I'm 42 now and still remembering this one thing that she said to me. And I was in the space where I was able to receive the information and it rocked my world, where I was talking about my brother and my mother. And she said, you've talked a lot about these problems, but they're not actually your own. They're not actually your own. And I was like, holy shit, they're not my own problems. But anyways, it just sent me on this trajectory of like this whole other thing. And it was just this one thing. And I've been in therapy off and on for all that time, but that like still resonates me. And so just kind of thinking some things Ocean said of like, and how we're like, sharing information and not to be like, the sleazy salesman. It's like, yes, some people might come in and they might be here for the 12-month journey, or maybe it's going to take them 56 months, whatever it is. And some people might just pop into this SASS Mass and hear 5 minutes of something that they just needed to hear because their guide sent them here, and it changes and sends them in a different direction that's more aligned with them. So you just never know like how many people you're really like impacting. Like someone could hear something on TikTok or like, so I just like that memory just came up for me and tied into some of what Ocean was saying just about the information. We just never know. But I think like it's important, and it's like just sharing. We're just all trying to share from the most authentic place, and that does change. And as time goes on, like we can only do what we can do with the information we have right now, and then we go on and we do other things. But it's what a universe. Yes, what an interesting. Whoever like set all this up, I don't know. It's really interesting. And let's see. No more hands up, I don't think. I'm done.
I actually see Ezra's hand up. Is that weird?
Oh, thank you. No, I'm on my phone, so couldn't have maybe
Yeah,
just
so
sorry.
that's okay. Let's see. So we were talking about the people pleaser thing, and it reminded me of something that I just kind of casually saw that really changed my mindset about the word people pleaser. So I think I think most of us in this group end up struggling with that kind of mentality. I think it's kind of baked into a lot of the trauma that people like us end up, experiencing. And so someone said that people pleaser still is putting the emphasis on the person being pleased, like the people being pleased, rather than the person doing the pleasing, which is, the self. And so that framing people pleasing as self-abandonment instead is actually, it kind of gets more to the point of what's happening there. And because it kind of feels like the word people pleaser, it's like, oh, okay, that's like a fine thing to do, right? Like that's, you're pleasing people, you're, doing good. And again, it puts the emphasis on the other rather than the self again. It just in the way that it is named, like that behavior is named. And so when you think of it like as self-abandonment instead, I feel like it kind of has forced me to like think about it in that way and to instead stop abandoning myself in those situations and instead asking myself, what do I actually want here? Instead of like when I go reaching for that like people pleaser coping mechanism, instead I go, oh, wait a second, what is myself actually asking for in this moment? And what is the people pleasing like trying to save me from, which is usually that other person abandoning me or something like that, in some way. And instead, it's like, okay, well, I have bartered, like Petra said, your abandonment for mine. Like we made that trade. And I feel like that's a big part of like what the foundations program and like shadow work deconstruction is like doing, is like reclaiming the self, which is like we end up talking a lot about like why the confidence that like that was last month, but having confidence in yourself and like being patient with yourself and not maybe not ostracizing like the inner child, like back in the back when we were doing inner child stuff. I mean, it's all inner child stuff really, but when we were really focusing in on that, it was kind of like not judging yourself. It's all about, it all comes from the self. Because I feel like that kind of relates back to the channeling a little bit too. Like you can't be so like you can't do the channeling if you don't have that connection to yourself. There's there was a movement person that was talking about like how you just like have all these little tubes in your body like and block like things get blocked, arteries get blocked, but in an energy spiritual context, other things get blocked, no matter what you want to call it, and you can't receive the messages that you're meant to receive if you are not like clearing those places for yourself. And but yeah, I think it's mostly I wanted to share that self-abandonment thing because I felt like that was very eye-opening for me, like as someone who like I actually went through like the beginning of my spiritual awakening a few months before the pandemic happened. Like did like a 12-step program for the way that I was like addicted to helping other people instead of myself as a distraction. And so that was like a big thing for me personally. So yeah.
I think I'm next. I just wanted to say real quick when Kat was talking, and I was going to share something about, I never like had this like one dying passion that I was gonna like follow, but that there was just lots of different things. And I like the author Elizabeth Gilbert, and she gave a talk one time, and she talked about people that are like hummingbirds, and they kind of go from thing to thing, but that they weave. They're like weaving this kind of all together. And anyways, I was thinking about that, and hummingbird just flew right in front of my car and was right in the flowers right in front of me. So since we were talking about channeling and guide messages, I just wanted to share that I had. And so like for me, seeing that hummingbird just now is just kind of like confirmation or like validation. And it's like I could choose to believe that that's what it is, or I could just be like, oh, that was just like a random hummingbird, but it's kind of like you kind of have that little element of what you want, what you want to believe. Some people would choose to believe that that is like a confirmation or just like a hello, hi from the universe or a nod. Um, that you do kind of have that choice. And I do choose to believe that it was like a, hey, and especially when like our energies all get together, things seem to happen like more obvious, like in your face. For me anyways. Then
Hello. So you talking about seeing like animal sinks kind of reminded me of my this past week, and that we had these really crazy thunderstorms that happened. Was that Friday? And there was actually a tornado that touched down in Rhode Island. I'm fine. I was nowhere near it because just as the rain was starting, a few days before that, I had received a phone call from one of the job applications that I submitted, asking me to come in for an interview. And I was like, yeah, I'll definitely come in for an interview. I have no reason to say no to an interview for a job. So I went, and even in the torrential downpour, like drove myself down. It's kind of like this more southern area of Rhode Island where I live in the more northern states. So it was kind of like an hour drive. Um, and as I started to drive on the highway, um, a great blue heron flew over the highway. And just some background, me and my witchy friend go to a cemetery here in Rhode Island that's called Swan Point because a bunch of swans will like nest there. But there is also a great blue heron that lives there. And the only reason that we know that is because we see him every single time that we go to the cemetery, to the point where it's kind of become our own sink. And so I saw it fly over the highway in the middle of like torrential downpour and was like, I'm going to get this job. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to get this job. And so I drive down and I have this interview. And as I'm leaving, the lady says, I'm going to recommend to them that they hire you as soon as possible. And so, like, I definitely want to just kind of like validate that like animal things happen. And when you notice it like that, totally take it as a sign because animals are around you all the time. And so, if your brain is grabbing the attention of like seeing that animal, there's probably a reason for it. Maybe just take stock of like what's going on around you at the moment, or pay attention to the thought that you just had just before seeing the animal. But uh, they almost always mean something. So I just wanted to share that. Who is next? Julie is next.
If my thing will come off of mute. Hopefully my dogs will stay quiet for this. I just wanted to, come back to what Jen Marie was talking about and like being afraid of being perceived as selling snake oil and all of that. There's sort of this other, I feel like, side of things that rattles you when it comes to this. Beyond the, need for authenticity and the fear of not being authentic enough is, especially when you've been channeling a lot and all of that, that connects you to the web, and the web is troubled lately. We're in a very socially contentious time where people are struggling to figure out culture and which way is right and which way is wrong. And at some point, I feel like as a witchy person, you're going to hit this place where there's this almost like sense of responsibility impressed upon you, right? Like whether it's regardless of what you believe in, whether it's to the ancestors or just the witches that came before you, in honoring that in the best way for this moment in time for the web. And I just kind of wanted to acknowledge that and say that if you didn't struggle that with that occasionally, like, you're not doing the work. Because I feel like in this time and this day and age where everything's so confusing, you can't help it. Like that means that you're taking it seriously to me. And especially as like, I think most of us here are white women except for Ben. Our whole social conditioning, our whole life was conform to survive, and that is like the antithesis of the witch's path. and those two things within you are bound to struggle, and fairly regularly. So that's all I wanted to say.
I really appreciate all of you guys. Like, thank you very much. I needed this. I love that like internal and external validation and the importance of both came up, um, because it's so true that uh, we do need both. There is this whole internal process that we've got going on that only we can do, right? Only we can uh, hold that space for ourselves and all of this other stuff. But at the same time, when you're on this like internal journey, uh, having someone there to like validate your experience makes a huge difference in that. A lot of people are really hard on themselves for needing or asking for that external validation. And I was one of those people that I never uh, would go up to someone and be like, "Hey, I need this validation." Where like I am now. Now I have the people and the relationships in my life that I could actually do that. When I become aware of a validation that I'm needing, I have people that I can go to and be like, "Hey, I need this kind of validation. Can you like pour some sugar on me or something?" Right? And you can do that. Um, but yeah, like this is a whole thing, huh? You wrote heron, Maria, but I said my brain read heroin. I have heroin that lives in my complex pond, and I'm like, huh. Like,
I mean, I could
where do
I don't
you
really
live?
know that there is a bird. They're talking about a feathered bird.
So funny.
I do that a lot too, though. My brain skips things and reads things.
And then
Interesting.
like smashes things together to make whole new magical things that make no sense to anyone but yourself. Yep. Yes. Yes. The blue heroine. I am likely going to spend the rest of my day um, working on my relationship with Gertrude, my home, the spirit of my home. And we're going to be talking about like building or reinforcing an outdoor area that we have so that I can actually be outside in the winter out there. So that's the project that I'm working on today. Anytime I do any of these like renovation projects or even painting or whatever, I have this whole like internal dialogue with Gertrude. And I treat them or try to hold the energy that I hold when I have someone like in my chair when I'm doing fairy godmother stuff, right? Of like what makes you feel powerful? This looks really good. How does this feel? Kind of so like I'm giving a dear friend a makeover. And it's been it's been fun. Oh man, of course, at the very end, the last 5 minutes, I start this conversation. But Gertrude has been making themselves more like known, not just to myself, but to other people that are coming around now as well, including my children, which has been a whole like fun experience of kind of walking them through that. Uh, but yeah, this is great. This is great. Witchcraft is awesome. And the cultivating a relationship with your home kind of changes so much uh, with like home life stuff. That's the other thing that I'm also doing now is I want to create a ritual of some sort uh, for the turning in with my home into the winter times, because like Gertrude saved my life last year in the blizzard, and I want to acknowledge the relationship that we carried the previous winter, and then like reinforce a relationship with them uh for the coming winter, right? And I know I could have a whole series on Gertrude. And this is the first time I've put so much intention in cultivating a relationship with home, because I've been nomadic most of my life. Um, so that's a whole thing. And having like roots. And I have a lot of childhood trauma with loss. We had 2 house fires before I was 14 that we lost everything. And so I have this non-attachment kind of uh wounding. I don't know how to explain that or to describe that, but yeah, so this is a whole thing, doing this with Gertrude and seeing like what happens uh when you when you do something on purpose. I love that about witchcraft, the science aspect of, okay, this is what I'm going to try this year and see how it goes, and then make adjustments next year to make it better. I like that part of it. Well, we have 4 minutes left. And we can do whatever we want with these 4 minutes. We can like launch into well, no, we can't launch into a whole nother topic. Because we love our mods. We don't want to monopolize all their time. Go ahead, Petra.
I just wanted to add, like, in the vein of like external validation, I just wanted to ask for a little, like, I don't know how to put this, like energetic hug, a little brouhaha, I don't know, of I'm breaking up with my therapist basically, and I think I mentioned that last week, but it's really become apparent in working with my body what's going on with that, and I just kind of wanted to, like, have that, like, let's have a little commotion for the dress moment, because this is scary shit, and like 6 months ago I definitely fucking couldn't have done this at all. And I feel like I'm someone who, like, even when people give me compliments, I'm like, like with them, and so I'm attempting to do something different and being like, hey, this is a big deal. And so I want to share that with all of you, and also say that it's a big deal, and say that I'm open to and I don't want to say welcoming of, that feels a little too much. I'm open to. That's where I'm at. For like kind of being like, I don't know. See, this is how I'm like, how do I ask for praise or like celebration? That's kind of what I'm just looking for, is like being like, yeah, you're doing it. That's kind of where I'm at, if that makes any sense.
I'm like sitting here typing and realizing, oh, well, I suck at typing, and it's probably going to take me longer to type it than we have. Thank you for showing up for your system like this, Petra. And what you're doing is hard. It is hard. But when you know that you need to make changes like this, when you know that it's time, uh, the power in choosing to take that step, even though it's kind of scary and makes you uncomfortable, is amazing. Way to go. That was hard and is hard. And we can do hard things. And you're not alone. And all of the things. I'm looking forward to holding whatever space you need held on the other side of this. And I'm excited to be able to share that space, whatever it looks like. Uh, again, on the other side of this, on the other end of the path.
Thank you.
It is high noon at the top of the world, and that means that we say goodbye for this week. And may your practice be expansive and filled with many blessings, bright and dark. I love you guys.